Seattle at night was always like this cold drizzling and full of warm lights reflected on the wet streets. I sat in my small upstairs office staring down at the empty road. That night seemed ordinary, but it was the beginning of the end. My name is Ethan Carter. I'm 38, a software engineer living in Seattle with my wife Rachel and our 12-year-old daughter Anna. We've been married for 14 years. From the outside, our life looked like a dream. A two-story wooden house stable, careers a well-behaved daughter, and quiet weekend family trips. Rachel was a psychologist, smart, sharp, admired by many. We always believed we were a team. We cooked dinner together, watched movies, read in bed. It wasn't perfect, but it was solid. At least I thought so. Until one night. It was a Saturday, rainy, quiet. Anna had gone to bed early. Rachel poured 2 glasses of red wine and sat next to me on the couch. Have you ever thought, maybe we should try something new, something bold? She asked, half smiling. I chuckled, like bungee jumping. She shook her head. No, what if we tried an open marriage? I froze. Wait, what? We'd still be married, she said calmly. Still raise Anna together. Still live together. But we'd have room to explore. With rules. With honesty. I stared at her. She wasn't joking. This wasn't a hypothetical. She meant it. What do you think? She asked, like she was suggesting a new TV show to try. I didn't know what to say. I had heard of open marriages, seen stories, read Reddit threads, but that was other people, not us. Rachel must have sensed my confusion. I love you, she said, but I also feel like I'm losing parts of myself. I need to reconnect with who I am. I nodded even though my heart was sinking. I understood her, but I also knew something was shifting, something we couldn't undo. That night I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, wondering if I had just agreed to the beginning of the end. I used to think that if two people loved each other enough, they could survive anything. But I've learned there are doors that once opened can never be closed the same way again. I spent a week thinking it over. Rachel didn't pressure me. She was patient, gentle, like she knew I'd eventually say yes. And maybe deep down I knew I would too. Not because I wanted to, but because I was afraid. Afraid that if I said no, she'd go looking for what she wanted anyway. So I agreed. We sat down and created a set of rules like two co-founders starting a new company. No emotional attachments. No one from our inner circle, no friends, no coworkers, no bringing anyone to the house. Full honesty. If you're seeing someone, you tell. And most importantly, Anna must never find out. They sounded clear, manageable, but human emotions don't fit neatly into bullet points. At first, nothing changed. We still had dinner together, still watched movies, still picked Anna up from school. I tried to convince myself everything was okay. Rachel changed first. She smiled more, took longer with her makeup, went out in the evenings to catch up with old friends, attend a professional seminar, grab coffee with a former client. She glowed, but not for me. I started noticing the gap between us growing. Still, I said nothing, because I had agreed. Because I didn't want to become the jealous, controlling husband in an open arrangement built on trust. Eventually, I caved and made a dating profile just to balance things, as Rachel had once said. I matched with a woman in marketing. She was kind, pretty, smart, but I felt nothing. The whole dinner I was thinking about Rachel and who she might be with that night. I realized I couldn't separate sex from emotion like the theory promised. One night after picking Anna up from piano class, I saw Rachel wearing a dress I'd never seen before. She stood in front of the mirror adjusting it. What do you think? She asked, spinning. You look beautiful, I said. Just dinner with an old colleague, she added casually. I nodded and walked away. That night, when she came home, I pretended to be asleep. She lay beside me and gently placed a hand on my back. I didn't move, just closed my eyes and felt empty. From then on, she went out more frequently. She was still a great mom, still made Anna's lunch, still helped with homework. But with me, something had broken. We still slept in the same bed, ate the same meals, but it felt like we were living two separate lives. I told myself it was just a phase, that we'd find our way back. But deep down, I knew we wouldn't. I used to believe that if I couldn't love anyone else besides my wife, at least I had friends I could trust completely. But it turned out, even that wasn't certain. A few months after we began our open relationship, Rachel started mentioning a familiar name, Liam Monroe. Do you remember Liam? Your college buddy, the writer, Rachel asked one evening while we were doing dishes together. Of course I remembered. How could I forget Liam, my best friend in college? The guy I shared a dorm room with for 3 years, co-built our first app with, spent sleepless nights eating ramen and dreaming of startups. After college, Liam moved to New York to work as an editor, then later as a novelist. We kept in touch here and there, but not often. He's back in Seattle, Rachel continued, like it was just a random update. Really, what for? I asked. He's working on a new book. He reached out to me for creative psychology insight. We've met a few times. Very interesting conversations. I was a bit surprised. A few times. Yeah, just coffee idea exchanges. He's still very sharp and deep. I nodded without saying much more. Part of me was happy to have an old friend back. Another part felt an uneasy twinge I couldn't name. A few days later, Liam came to our house. Ethan, he said, hugging me tightly like no time had passed. Liam looked the same tall, a bit rugged, charming in that slow, dangerous kind of way. Rachel made coffee. The three of us sat in the living room like old friends. Liam talked about his new novel on love in the age of hyperconnection, a topic Rachel found fascinating. They debated excitedly, passionately, like I wasn't even there. I believe love needs absolute honesty no matter what kind of relationship, Rachel said, eyes lit up. Liam nodded, and we need to accept that emotions aren't fixed. You can't expect someone to love you the same way forever. I sipped my coffee, listening, feeling like an outsider in my own home. After that, Liam started visiting more often. At first, it was to discuss literature, then review manuscripts, then stay for dinner. It's convenient. I didn't stop them. They were adults. I had no evidence. I didn't want to be the jealous guy who couldn't handle the rules of an open marriage built on trust. One night I came upstairs and found Rachel's office door slightly ajar. Inside, she sat close to Liam, both staring at her laptop screen. Not touching, not inappropriate, just close enough to make me uncomfortable. Liam turned and smiled. Hey, Ethan, we're debating the ending. Need a middle-aged man's opinion. I smiled weakly. Careful middle-aged men are practical and cynical. We all laughed, but I didn't find it funny. Later that night, just the two of us. I asked Rachel quietly, is there something going on between you and Liam? She looked at me without flinching. Are you worried? Of course I'm worried. I know Liam. I trusted him like a brother. He's just a friend, an old friend, that's all. I value our connection. I nodded, but my gut wasn't at ease. I didn't know, maybe I already did, but couldn't admit that for the first time since we got married, another man was slipping into a space in my marriage where only I used to be. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from space. It comes from between two people who used to mean everything to each other. I do not remember exactly when I first truly felt uneasy. Maybe it was when I walked into the kitchen and saw Rachel laughing, not her usual chuckle, but a light private laugh meant only for the person in front of her, Liam. Or maybe it was that day when I opened Rachel's calendar and saw Tuesday, 10 a.m. client meeting. But that evening, Anna asked so casually, "Dad, why did Uncle Liam sleep over at our house on Tuesday?" I froze. "How do you know he stayed over?" I asked calmly. "I saw his slippers in the living room when Mom took me to school. I thought he left, but now he's back again." I nodded and patted her head. Maybe he just stopped by. That night, Rachel said Liam needed a quiet place to finish his manuscript, so I let him work in the office. She said it naturally without hesitation, but my heart sank. From that day on, I started paying more attention. Not snooping, just noticing the little things I had once overlooked. Rachel changed her phone password. She set her phone to Do Not Disturb even at home. She smiled while texting but always put her phone face down. One night while she was in the shower, a message lit up on her screen from a number not saved in her contacts. "Same time tomorrow, right? I just want to hold you for a bit and leave." My heart dropped. I didn't have a name, just words. I took a screenshot and sent it to my personal email just in case. I began to change too. Quieter, more distant. And oddly, that seemed to make Rachel more comfortable. "You okay lately?" she asked one night while I was doing the dishes. "Yeah, just tired. Deadline's close." She nodded and didn't press further. We no longer made love. We no longer held hands when sleeping. We no longer hugged after a long day. Everything felt performed, like we were housemates raising a child together. I wasn't even sure if I was jealous, hurt, or just waiting to explode. But one thing was clearer than ever: my intuition. One night, Rachel said she was heading downtown for a writers' meeting. I followed her, staying 2 blocks behind. I parked and waited. She walked alone, unaware. Moments later, Liam stepped out of another car waiting for her. They hugged, not a casual hug, a long, full-bodied, unguarded embrace. And when they pulled away, they held hands. Only for a few seconds, but it felt like my entire world collapsed in that moment. I didn't confront them. I didn't shout. I drove home slowly, empty. That night, Rachel came home around 11. I was sitting on the couch, lights dim. She was startled to see me. "You're still up." I was going to sleep, but I'm not tired. "How was the meeting?" I asked calmly. "Fine. We had some good ideas. Want me to tell you later?" I nodded. "Sure, later's fine." I watched her go upstairs. Something inside me ached quietly, deeply. I had seen, I knew, but I wasn't ready to face it yet. There are truths that hurt so deeply you wish you had never known. But the worst part isn't the truth itself, it's the time you spent lying to yourself to avoid seeing it. I spent the whole weekend digging. It wasn't about suspicion anymore. I needed confirmation. I wasn't trying to believe or not believe, I needed to know. I installed a monitoring app on her phone, not something I'm proud of, but I had already lost too much to care about the morality of my investigation. Each message I read was like a cut through my trust. "Liam, I miss you. Every day, every hour." "Rachel, I miss you too. We need to talk to Ethan. I can't keep hiding." "Liam, I don't want to lose him, but I love you." This wasn't some self-discovery experiment. It was a real relationship, deep, emotional, long-term, with plans. And worse, built on a double betrayal from my wife and from my best friend. I printed the messages, put them in an envelope. That Sunday night, as Rachel set down her tea, I handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked. Your love, I replied, not meeting her eyes. Rachel opened the envelope. She read through everything. She said nothing. She didn't deny it. I looked at her, waiting for an apology, panic, even guilt, anything. But she just sat there, quiet. Finally, she looked up. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it did, I said, my voice dry. I didn't plan this. Ethan, it started with conversations. He listened, he understood me. He made me feel alive again. I didn't mean to betray you. I let out a bitter laugh. You didn't mean to yet. You lied, hid things, and fell in love with my best friend. Rachel started crying for the first time in months. I'm sorry, but I can't lie to myself anymore. I love him. I was frozen. Everything I had feared had become true, and not just physical betrayal. Rachel had emotionally left this marriage long ago. I was simply late to the truth. I left the house that night, took nothing but my wallet, phone, and a pain I couldn't name. I drove aimlessly through the city rain, tapping against the windshield, the familiar, silent, cold Seattle rain echoing my thoughts. I parked near Lake Union, staring at the reflections of lights on the water. My mind was blank. How does someone love you for 14 years, raise a child with you, build a home, and then one day look you in the eyes and say they love someone else? I didn't know. I just knew I had lost everything. The next morning, Rachel called. I didn't answer. She texted, "Can you come home so we can talk for Anna?" For Anna, right. I still had my daughter. I couldn't fall apart completely. I came home. Rachel was waiting in the kitchen. No tears, no excuses, just a printed sheet on the table, a separation agreement. I think this is what we should do. We'll work out everything for Anna. I don't want a war. I said nothing, just nodded. Wars don't start with shouting. They start the moment trust dies. They say losing someone you love is like losing half your heart, but losing your best friend, that's like losing your entire past. I officially moved out on a Saturday afternoon. No yelling, no crying, just 3 suitcases, a box of tech gear, and an old family photo, the only one I still wanted to keep. Rachel stood on the porch holding Anna. My daughter looked confused and asked quietly, "Where are you going, Daddy?" I knelt down and hugged her tightly. "I'm not going far, sweetheart, just staying somewhere else for a while. I'll always be here for you, okay?" Anna nodded, lips tight. She understood more than we thought. Kids always know. They just don't always say it. I moved into a small rented apartment in Fremont, about 20 minutes from the old house. It was modest and quiet. I brought my old coffee machine, a worn leather armchair, and a whole lot of emptiness. The first week I lived like a ghost, went to work, ate whatever laid still staring at the ceiling. I didn't call anyone. I didn't check social media. I ignored personal emails. Until one day Liam texted, "Liam, I don't know what to say, but I'm sorry." "Liam, I didn't mean to ruin everything." "Liam, I guess I lost you too, didn't I?" I stared at the messages, heart bitter. Losing my wife was already enough pain, but losing the friend who once shared my dreams was a completely different kind of heartbreak. I didn't reply. He called, I declined. A week later, I met Rachel again at the lawyer's office. Everything was civil property split by agreement, shared custody for Anna. Rachel suggested, "You can pick Anna up on weekends or whenever it works for you." I nodded, nothing more to say. Leaving the office, I saw Liam waiting near the parking lot, probably there for Rachel. Our eyes met. I walked toward him calmer than I expected. "Do you have anything to say?" I asked. Liam looked guilty. "I don't know how to explain. I didn't mean to, it just happened." "I know, but why her?" I looked straight into his eyes. Liam looked down. "I'm sorry." I let out a cold laugh. Sorry doesn't change anything. You didn't just take the woman I loved, you stepped on a friendship that lasted over a decade. Liam tried to speak, but I raised my hand to stop him. From now on, don't call, don't text. For the rest of my life, you're no longer my friend. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. Back at the apartment, I sat alone in the dark. No lights on. In the silence, the pain no longer screamed. It was quiet but deep, like the echo of a sad song long after the final note has faded. Anna came over the following weekend. She hugged me tightly, curling into my side like she used to when she was little. "You're still my dad, right?" she asked softly. I held her close, always. Even though everything else had fallen apart, I still had her. And I realized that was reason enough not to collapse. There are losses that forgiveness alone can't fill. Only time and ourselves can mend the holes left behind. I started writing, not for attention, just to let things out, to process, to avoid going insane. I created an anonymous blog, no real name, no photo. My first post was only 3 lines. I agreed to an open marriage when my wife asked for freedom after 14 years. Now she's in love with my best friend, and I'm here drinking cold coffee alone. I didn't expect anyone to read it, but a few days later, someone commented, "Been there." I couldn't forgive, but I learned to live with it. Then another, "You're not alone, we're here." Strangers hidden behind screens became an invisible support system that helped keep me from falling apart. I wrote more about the emptiness, the quiet mornings without shared coffee, the tears that came out of nowhere when hearing an old song. Rachel messaged weekly updates about Anna's scheduled dentist appointments, school reports. Nothing more. Cold practical, like we hadn't shared a bed for 14 years. One day she wrote, "If one day you feel okay, I hope we can be friends." I stared at the message for a long time. I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. Friends with someone who once promised to love me every day and then fell in love with someone else behind my back. No, some bonds once cracked become scars, not painful anymore but never whole again. Anna and I met regularly on weekends. She seemed to be adjusting too, talked less about her mom, almost never mentioned Liam. But there was something in her eyes, like she wanted to ask something but didn't know how. One afternoon, while driving her home after art class, Anna suddenly asked, "Are you sad, Dad?" I paused. "About what, honey?" "About Mom, Icky, and Uncle Liam." I went quiet, glanced at her in the rearview mirror. She was growing up faster than I'd realized. "Yeah, I was very sad, but I'm okay now, because I still have you." She nodded silently. But that night she sat a little closer to me when we watched our movie, and for the first time in months I truly felt loved. Slowly I returned to work, reconnected with a few old friends, the kind who didn't ask, "What happened?" but simply, "How are you today?" I started jogging in the mornings, reading again, learning how to cook, not for a family dinner anymore, but to take care of myself. Late one night, I received a message from an anonymous follower on the blog. "I lost my husband, lost my faith in people, but I learned how to love again, starting with myself." I smiled and typed back, "I'm learning too, bit by bit." I no longer knew or cared how Rachel and Liam were doing. I didn't look them up, I didn't ask. Because what I needed wasn't closure, it was a beginning. Not one filled with fireworks, just peaceful enough for me to take the next step. Some chapters in life don't need to close with thunder, just a sigh and the courage to walk on. A year after I moved out of what used to be my home, everything had changed in ways I never imagined. I relocated to Bainbridge Island, a quiet town, a ferry ride away from Seattle. No noise, no rush. There was the sea, tall trees, a little coffee shop where I wrote on Sunday mornings, and a small rental house with a lavender garden, Anna's favorite scent. Rachel and Liam were still together, I knew through mutual friends, and the subtle look in the teacher's eyes when she handed Anna off after school. I didn't care anymore. What I cared about was that every weekend Anna came over with stories, new drawings, and bright eyes whenever she saw me cooking her favorite meal. You know what, Dad, she said one afternoon while we were watering the garden? I think I believe now that you can have two homes without feeling sad. I didn't answer. I just smiled. Sometimes your child says something that makes you realize you must have done something right. I kept writing. That anonymous blog now had thousands of followers. Every story I posted, even a short one about an old coffee mug or tears from a forgotten song, was met with replies. Some said my words gave them the courage to leave toxic marriages. Some thanked me for not sugarcoating the healing process. A small publishing house reached out asking me to turn it into a book. I hadn't said yes yet, but for the first time in years, I felt like I had a purpose again. One rainy afternoon, I sat near the window at my usual spot. People walked by. A woman a few tables away smiled at me, not flirtatiously, just a quiet smile like saying, "I see you." I nodded back. Nothing more, nothing needed. That evening, Anna and I flipped through old photo albums. There was one from a trip to Oregon, me, Rachel, and Anna. I almost skipped past it, but Anna held it open. "Does this picture make you sad, Dad?" I looked at it for a while, then I shook my head. No, because it was real, even if things changed after it was real. Anna leaned on my shoulder. "Then we still have a lot of real moments to make, right, Dad?" I hugged her, smiled. "Right, and I won't miss a single one." Life isn't a movie with a perfect ending. But if you're brave enough to keep walking, you can write the next chapter, one that's better, more honest, and worth living. I lost a wife, I lost a friend, but I found myself again, and sometimes that's what matters most.